G'day folks, my name is Brendan, welcome again to Turbo Build, and today we're mating up the turbo's downpipe to the rest of the 3-inch exhaust system. Now you may remember in the last episode we got to work and finished all the plumbing for the new turbo. However, we now need to finish off the pipe work out of the turbo into the rest of the exhaust. Now I've already fitted up the dump pipe. We did that a couple of weeks ago, and this time we now need to fit the sort of rest of that dump down into the 3-inch exhaust. I've already got a 3-inch exhaust that I was running previously, so we just need to mate the two together. The turbo and the dump runs a 3-inch V-band. They don't quite mate up with my old 3-inch V-band, although they're about this far apart from one another. So we'll get underneath the car, have a look at what those distances are. We're going to have to add some pipe work to the old exhaust to bring it forward to meet up with the new dump. We'll have to weld up a new V-band flange to the whole thing to make them all meet up. It's going to be a little bit of work, but I think we can do it today. Let's go. So once again, we run underneath the car. This time we have to go a little further back because we have to play with this exhaust system. And so you can see our new dump coming out of the turbo 3-inch system down to just near the back of the gearbox there, where it needs to mate up with the rest of the exhaust. Unfortunately, there is a bit of a gap here. If I scoot down a little further, of about 50 mil perhaps, 2 inches or so that we need to fill. So what I'm going to do is cut this off, add a bit of an extension to the exhaust, and then weld a new V-band to mate up with this one. This V-band and this V-band are both female units, and you know how they have a little key in here. Unfortunately, they don't really quite match up perfectly. Thankfully, I have got a new male unit to go in here, so we'll cut this female off, put the male on this side, butt them up together, weld it all up. It should be peachy. It does mean, however, the first thing we need to do is measure up some distances here, get a bit of an idea on what we need to do, then we can remove this and then cut some new pipe, weld it all together, get things just right, and then neaten it all up. So the exhaust is now off, and I've just got it on the floor because there's no easier place to put it. Unfortunately, it's kind of a bit gangly. So we can now remove these hose clamps off the front here. We're going to have to pull back some of the heat shield, heat wrapping stuff. Unfortunately, it's a shame because it was such a nice, neat job. But we'll have to pull it back so that we can weld on the extension piece and the extra flange. I can use my scissors here to snip this. Now don't use your mum's scissors or your wife's scissors, particularly not her the scissors she uses when she makes your underpants, because you could stuff them up. This stuff's not really good for scissors. So use your garage scissors, alright? With that off, we can now lop this fella off. And we need to add that plus the extra 20 mil back on, add our new V-band, weld it all up, job done. So this guy's now lopped off and cleaned up with the grinder and the file. Before we go and go cut things and try and weld stuff together, I'll put it back on the car, and with that we can then properly measure the distance that we need to cut. So let's get this thing back on the car. So I've now tacked the new V-band onto the end of this piece of pipe. I've marked out the distance there, which is about 74 millimeters in total from the face of the V-band to the point where we need to cut. That'll fill that gap on the exhaust. So we'll cut along this masked line, and then we keep this piece welded up to the inside under the car. Alright, let's see how this fits up. Not too bad. I think I can deal with that. There's a bit of a gap here where my cuts are kind of janky, but I can fill that, I suppose. It's not huge, it's not great, but yeah, good enough. Let's weld her up. It's all welded up now. It's pretty sketchy welding, but it'll do. Yeah, good enough, I guess, for this job. So fingers crossed, it all bolts up onto the car reasonably nicely. So time to get this thing in underneath the car. So we've got things more or less all buttoned up. And so if we come back in under the car, you can see our new V-band. I hit this with some high temp black paint. I didn't have any of the white left, although it is stainless. My welds aren't exactly the best, so I wouldn't be surprised if, despite being stainless, it still gets rusty somehow because, yeah, ghetto BEAVIS engineering. The V-band's gone up nice and neat. It all seems to mate up really nice and close, so I was really happy with the overall fitment now that we've had that job done. One thing I did want to do now, and I thought I'd mention quickly, just sort of the last job for the exhaust, is the exhaust to gearbox brace that I used to run. So this bolt here in the transmission has been removed, and I used to run this sort of U-bolt type clamp bolted up to the transmission more or less like this. I've had to shorten it and re-drill the hole because this new dump is a bit closer to the exhaust, to the gearbox, and a bit further from this firewall. It's now pretty much perfectly centered. The old one was a bit off, closer to the, not the firewall, but the trans tunnel. So this one's in a much nicer position. It meant I had to re-drill this bracket, but that bolts up like this and braces the dump to the trans, sort of keeps the whole engine, exhaust, turbo mounted solidly and sturdy, all held together. And obviously the rest of the exhaust has still got pretty stiff mounts, but they do allow for a little bit of movement and expansion as the exhaust heats up and things. So now that this is done, I can bolt that up, and that is pretty much the exhaust done. Well, that's it for this episode. The turbo is now all plumbed in and piped up. Well, mostly. We do need to work on the intercooler piping, but that'll be for next episode. So be sure to hit the subscribe button so don't miss that episode, and of course, give the video a little thumbs up thing down below because that helps me out a lot. Thank you very much for watching. As always, you can find us at BEAVIS Motorsport on Facebook, Instagram, our website, and all of that cool stuff, and we'll see you next time. Ta.